What am I? Here we go. It's not Wednesday anymore. It's Thursday.
Yeah, I don't think I actually updated my stream title or anything else, so it's going to be completely wrong. Um,
All good.
yeah, well,
I prepared for all of that before work because I'm a professional today.
nice.
Yay!
Very nice. And then, of course, I don't have your chat pulled up on my machine because, again, it is OBS really taxes my computer pretty heavily.
Oh, mine too. Yeah, I've got a PC, but yeah, I'm more comfortable on a Mac. But I thought, oh no, Windows will totally be able to handle this.
Right.
But yeah, if I pull up the multi-stream link, like everything stutters. Oh, it's bad. So I won't be able to see that multi-stream thing going on.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, then I guess Sovereign, you can sort of kind of run the show. That works out pretty well. Right. Uh, you're gonna have to go to yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Jan thinks I'm a turnip. Right, right. Yeah, so I am going to be doing my Adepticon class, so the basing class. Yep.
Know this. All right,
I
I'll
don't know.
still
Yeah,
watch Bug
yeah.
Cave
I
soon.
just found out about this today too. So
Sorry,
Okay,
Mikey.
so I think everybody now in my stream should be able to hear both Mocha and Sovereign.
Oh,
Um,
sweet. All right, you
and
guys are live.
yeah, oh, I'm live. So and
as am I.
Jan actually got to raid me for the first time ever, which is amusing since I almost always raid him. But so for the folks that actually knew what's going on, hopefully they all have a base to work on, which is what we're playing with right here. This is sort of kind of what. Yes, I am late. I had a little bit of trouble with OBS just getting things set up because my computer is a special.
Blame it on me.
Yeah, it's all Mocha's fault.
It's absolutely Mocha's fault. We had the rain. He just
Right.
wouldn't show up.
Right, right.
It was
I forgot what day
ridiculous.
it was. You know, I'm still in my pajamas.
Yeah, so seems good. Let's see where we're at here.
Oh, that's the one thing I didn't do when I got home from work. I could have put pajamas back on.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I don't know
So,
why.
hey, Trader Legions. Um, so, all right, I'm trying to get my camera pickup here to.
Hey Trader, hey Drew.
There we go. Okay, so to sort of kick this off, hopefully everybody that is planning on following along has a sculpting tool and a base and some sort of sculpting putty. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So this is sort of the result that we're looking for right here. Is a shale base, right? And it takes about 25 to 30 minutes or so usually to get the sculpting portion of this done. And then from there, it's about an hour and a half or so to paint it. Oh, Griffin's Roost also rated me. Wow, you guys are awesome. Although I suppose that's sort of how this Adepticon thing has been working, or Adepticant thinking. And thank you for the follow. I'm pulling out a bit of Avs Epoxy Sculpt. So this was actually going to be sponsored by Avs Studios, and everybody was going to actually get one of these nice little demo things of Epoxy Sculpt, Part A and Part B. So, you know, it was really pretty cool that they went ahead and sponsored me to go ahead and do this. So, if things play out the way they're supposed to, I will be doing this class next year as well. And you lot can go ahead and sign up and actually walk home or go home with a set of this stuff. But anyway, so
Hey guys.
go ahead and
All right, I
eat
just
this
went
out.
live. Sorry about that.
Woo! Yay, Mocha's live.
All right, we're taking Bug King's baking.
Baking class, yes. We're going to go ahead and bake bases.
Bug King. Surprise!
I love
We're
it.
making muffins today.
Hoorah!
Anyway, yeah. Welcome, you guys. Join in the fun.
Join in the fun, yeah. So, but yeah, so if you're using like DAS air dry clay or something else, you don't need to do this step. But for me, I've got to go ahead and mix this stuff together. If you're using epoxy sculpt or Milliput or even green stuff or brown stuff, all of that kind of thing works for this process. You just have to treat the different types of materials appropriate for those materials. So for like green stuff and brown stuff, thanks for the follow. I really need to make that announcement bigger on my screen, but it's so hard. Brown stuff, giggity. Dude, it's a thing, man.
Oh, I know.
And it's brown. I mean, it's freaking brown. It's more like it's almost like if you take people that are familiar with sculpting probably know that you can take either Avs Epoxy Sculpt or Milliput and mix it in with green stuff. And what that does is when it dries, it's actually hard. You can sand it, you can scrape it and do all those things that normally you can't do with green stuff. So that's a nice trick if you have that. You mix up the green stuff, you mix up the other type of epoxy putty, and then you mix the two 50-50 together. Yeah, a stick. I suggest not the brown stuff in the toilet. Well, I mean, Snickernack you could. It would be special.
Good job, Yeji.
Yeah. Yeji for the win. So yeah, and I mean, for, what is this? I think this is a 50 millimeter base, or maybe it's a 40 millimeter base. No, this is a 60. Yeah, so this one here is a 60 mil. And that's painted already. So for like a 50 millimeter base, I usually go with about this much stuff. So it's about an inch round, thereabouts. And when the time comes, you just sort of mash it onto the base.
Technical term.
Oh yeah, no, it's just mashed in there, Mocha. It really is. What's
the difference between mash and mush?
Mash and mush. Mashing is more aggressive. Thanks again for the follow.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so right. So I mean, I'm like really aggressively.
Very, very technical.
Yeah, mashing it in, right? And the fun part here, also, if you take a look at it, sort of on the side, I've got a decent amount of variation in how it all looks, right? So the next step.
Hi, Callie. Hi, Green. Hi, Sammy. Sorry, there's gonna be three of us.
Yeah, Sovereign and I basically crashed Bug King's class, so
it's brilliant.
We didn't even tell him. We didn't
No,
ask.
It was just like all of a sudden.
We're going in.
It's up to Can. We're gonna try to lay pretty low, but yeah, for those just popping in, ! multi-stream. I'm gonna set that up in the chat. But we're gonna kind of focus on what Bug King's doing and paint along and hang out today. But you won't hear too much from me like I usually do. So Bug King, back to you.
So the next major step here is once you finish mashing or smashing or crushing your putty or clay into your base, you need to go ahead and get rid of all of the fingerprints. So I just wet the tool a little bit and really quickly go around, and nothing careful at all about any of this. I'm not worried about how it changes the shape or anything. In fact, the more sort of random everything becomes, the better off you're going to be, because natural stuff is random. It's not ordered, and humans don't do random terribly well. So, I mean, even
our brains automatically look for patterns and everything.
Exactly. So, you could even do this step with your eyes closed. I kid you not. Like, that will help. If you're having trouble and it's looking too ordered, close your eyes and just sort of move the tool around a little bit. I do have a little bit of practice. I don't know how many hundreds of these stupid things I've done at this point, but it's more than several hundreds of bases. So, but anyway, so I'm going to go around and finish getting all of my nasty fingerprints, which, I mean, you can see I was priming stuff before. My fingernails are all covered in paint. Yeah. So once that's all set, now comes sort of the fun part, where I'm going to start adding in different sort of layers of shale strata here, right? So, and all that involves, I usually start at the top. That's just a personal preference. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to. Hey, Droxer. Oh, and yeah, by the way, guys, if you want me to actually see something, please do highlight my name. Slightly decaying. I haven't been bitten by zombies yet, General. You're going to have to talk to her about how badly she's slacking. So, this is actually out of focus. Let me fix that.
Okay, we need to pause something real quick. That multi-stream link is very wrong because when Yeji set it up, she misspelled my username.
Oh no!
Yeji, I'm so mad at you right now.
Brilliant. And sorry for folks.
That. 1 second, I'm going to get us a new multi-stream link.
Apparently Discord is going to possibly be digitized a little bit for me because the internet is being shared by everybody on the East Coast. So it's spotty. Yeah, it really is spotty. So
yeah, I've got some bad stutters on my
yep.
end too.
Yep. So all right. So now you just take the edge of the tool, and that also is something. I mean, this is sort of kind of in some ways an advertisement for my class, I suppose, as well, because that's the other thing that I was going to have everybody. I was just going to go ahead and supply the necessary tool to go ahead and do this. So I'm taking just the sort of knife edge of this flat round, and I'm working in some really rough sort of strata here. You know, and shale's fun because it really does, I mean, unless you want to do something like uplift, which we could get into a long conversation about how geology works and all that kind of fun stuff, but we don't have the time really. So just trust me in that, you know, it's going to be one of the really important things that you need to do with all of this type of strata to make it look right is all of your lines have to either bleed off the edge of the base or they have to terminate into another line of strata. They can't just sort of be like something like this, where it comes out and you see how it stops. That's going to look really unnatural and wrong. So to fix that, you can go ahead and just sort of bring it into another strata line, right? Just like so. And the fact that it ends here is also fine. So it starts at a strata line, it ends at a strata line. Basically what this does is this sets up this whole piece here to be, you know, it's sort of actually part of that portion that's coming down. So I'm going to go ahead and lower this whole section. And then once you get sort of the larger ones, right, which I've got most of my larger pieces done. Everybody's weirdos. I really should put my dashboard
guys,
up.
I'll catch up in a second.
Yeah.
I found it. Here it is.
JJ Beard, thank you very much for the follow. Great to Table Studios. Mocha Minis followed me. Well done, Mocha.
I know. I did. I had to wait for the perfect time. Better to derail your class.
And
I'm following along.
Dabuye J also followed. Thank you very much. I actually pulled up my my little dashboard on my phone. So, yeah. So now I'm going to start adding sort of finer layers of strata here. And I mean, it's still following another one. We'll wait for that to come through here, and I will thank whoever that was for the follow. Or, well, that might have been something else. No, that was, Dayray hosting me. Thank you very much, Day. Oh, good Lord. And JJ Beard with 100 bits. Thank you very much. So, you know, going with these smaller strata layers here, it's just, you know, I'm basically working in just a little bit of extra detail to make the paint step just that little bit easier. The more sort of fine detail you work into this, the easier it is going to be to go ahead and paint this. So, and again, I'm intentionally being messy with this. I'm not trying to keep anything neat. I'm not worried about the fact that I'm pulling bits and pieces off the edge. That all we can come back to, or you can actually keep it with just a little bit of cleanup later on, and it becomes really, really easy to have, you know, you just sort of kind of fix the detail up. It's really easy at a later state. So this is all pretty simple stuff here. All right, so I've got this one here. I've got a nice big flat area there, so I'm going to go ahead and break that up a little bit. I'll pull this back in.
Bucky, what size base are you working with right now? How many?
I think it's a 50 millimeter.
40?
It's a 40 or a 50. I don't know.
Okay.
It's a CMON limited
That
base.
looks like a 50 or a 60.
So I do know. I think this is a 60. So what I've got right here, which is already painted as an example of what it looks like when it's painted. I mean, there's another whole process that you can do, like using tree bark, and you can wind up with something that looks like this. So,
thank you.
T Schmid 12, thank you for the follow. But anyway, you know, so, and this would be a whole completely different separate class on how to deal with that. But basically, it's take tree bark and just mash it into a surface. Again, with that really technical term, mashing. So I'm just going to finish breaking up this surface here.
Okay.
And it's kind of important. Remy's Revenge. Thank you. Thank you very much for the follow.
Remy.
Remy.
Not different Remy.
Different Remy. Okay.
So there's only one Remy that matters to me.
So that ride is actually going to be opening up pretty soon. They're close to actually completing that. So.
I see you, JJ.
So the other little, I mean, it's not a secret exactly. I work for Walt Disney Imagineering in my sort of quote-unquote real job. So this whole shutdown has been kind of interesting because it's the first time, I think ever, that the parks have all been shut down. So good times, right? All right, so that pretty much does it for what I want to do. I mean, it's a good level of detail. You can go nuts with it. You can actually continue to add detail. You can go a little less. It's not, oops. So there's another thing that you actually do want to avoid. I started with a line here. I went across a line of strata and continued out. You don't want to cross your lines. So you'll notice how I don't have any lines that start and then continue on a lower level. Now, if you can actually do something like that, like if we wanted to say right here, we decided that there's actually a kind of a break or a large crack, we can do that. I'm going to use the smaller edge of the tool now and just sort of work some detail in here. And what this will wind up looking like is just a really large sort of... Is everything okay?
It's fine. Sorry, I totally knocked over my... I'm so sorry. I'm a bad student. I knocked over my big thing of epoxy sculpt. That's
Oh, brilliant. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to rough this edge up a little bit. So this is about the only time that you want to have something that sort of translates down through a bunch of layers, is if you want to introduce a large crack in it. Another thing that you can do on the edges, you can take the tool and press it in, and press it in, and press it in, and press it in, and press it in. And you get these nice lines, and it gives you that sort of neat little round edge, and then you can do a similar thing adjacent to it, and you get sort of this weird roughed up edge. So I'm going to actually go around the whole thing and just scribe a bunch of lines in. And I mean, I'm not worried about lining anything up here because this is just, you know, it's the outside edge of the base. Most of this will be relatively dark when we paint it. So that's another unfortunate thing about doing this online like this is I was going to supply everybody with a base that I had sculpted, so that the next step, you could actually move right on to painting. You can't. You do actually have to let this stuff cure pretty much overnight before you paint it. Or if you're using DAS air dry clay, it can take a lot longer. So I don't know. I'm like totally ignoring chat too. Do not cross the streams. Yeah. So, but yeah. So here we go. I'm just going to continue this around here. And we're just about done with all of the sculpting work. So one of the things that's nice about this is that it's so loose and open. You can do these really quickly. And this is something that you can do for an entire army with inside a reasonable amount of time. If you sit down and you're just going to go ahead and do like a bunch of these at once, you can get a whole squad's worth done in, well, what is it, like, it's 8 to a squad, so it takes about 30 minutes to do one. Nice stuff. Bless him for his enthusiasm, though. Cute. Yeah, well, so, because I normally only stream Sunday mornings, but because this is a sort of odd special case, I went ahead and did a Thursday afternoon, and we've got, the wee monster running about and stuff. So that's why he's decided that I'm so old I'm senile.
Wait, you aren't?
Last I checked, well, no. I mean, here's the thing. How would I know?
That's fair. Yeah.
Right?
Fair, yeah.
How would I know?
When other people tell you, you just gotta believe them.
Right. Parkoda, thank you for the follow, and Beef in the Hole, thank you very much for the follow. So yeah, that's it. Inside about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending upon how nuts you want to go, that's a fully sculpted base.
Man, I'm bad at this. This is awesome.
Well, now keep in mind, I've had quite a bit of practice.
You've been doing this for a while. Yeah. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
so, and the more you do it, the more sort of used to it you're going to get as stuff. Nikki Coles is hosting me. Thanks, Nikki. So yeah, I mean, after you do 3 or 4 of them, whoops. So stream done? Yeah, General, absolutely, stream is done. No, we're going to actually go on to now one that I did before, which is dry. And we're going to do a process where I basically increase the level of detail. So I've got some of this Woodland Scenics olive green underbrush sort of clump foliage stuff. I'm going to take some super glue and just mash it about in a couple of spots. I'm going to add a little bit where I think maybe some foliage would actually start. And keep in mind, this is actually before I prime the thing or anything else. So I'm going to take it and mash it on. This stuff is actually pretty old too, so it sort of disintegrates on me. But really not worried, again, about being neat or clean, keeping stuff, well, except of course that the super glue is, my super glue is a little old. So it's not really performing the way I want it to. So I'm going to go ahead with the super dangerous 1 to 3 second insta-cure. And, well, yeah, I mean, so the fun bit...
Is it like the fumes, or what makes it dangerous?
It'll burn you. You can get second-degree burns from this stuff.
Yeah.
Because,
Good to know.
yeah, so, and frequently when you actually apply it to flock like this, the flock will actually start to smoke.
Oh. Does it, like, melt?
No. But it will, like I said, it'll actually start to smoke. If you get it on you, like I said, you can get second-degree burns from it. It will burn to the point where it blisters. So
You sound like you're speaking from experience.
I've done it a couple of times, yes. Yeah, well, it's thinner than water. So if you're not exceptionally careful with this stuff, it'll make a mess of you. Like that. Fuck. Ow. Sorry. um, yeah, so good times. So once that's set, I'm gonna use my finger and actually knock 90% of this off, and we'll stay with that much. So now I'm gonna move on to hopefully not destroying the work that I've been doing earlier today on the Kingdom Death model that I was working on. That would be good. And I'm just I have some of this Badger Airbrush Stynylrez that I think I got actually at last Adepticon. But I just brush it on. I know that, it's like, oh, this is for airbrushing. It brushes on just fine. And I'm going to use this super high quality brush here that you're going to see. I don't know where I got this, but like I said, like super, super high quality brush. And again, this is really, high tech stuff. Just poured it out on it en masse, and I'm mashing it about.
I'm not sure, but that may have been sarcasm.
You're not sure. Okay, good. I'll lay it on even thicker next time so that it's abundantly clear, even for somebody as low intelligence as you.
That.
Yeah, no problem. I got you covered.
No, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, gotcha.
Thank you.
Yep. So.
Keep going. I'll start doing karaoke in the background.
Nice.
That would be.
That would be super terrible. I don't know what I would do. I mean, that's God. I despise karaoke. I mean, I despise karaoke.
Oh, my viewers are giving me so much crap because of how quiet I'm being right now.
Oh, nice.
Not a thing I normally am in streams.
Right. That's great.
Yeah, we're on our best behavior.
Thanks, Armin's Wrath. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no. I mean, of all the people around, Armin lives about, I guess about 2 hours from me. So, and he's, he does things like at the top of my stream, he'll say, he's backing up the dump truck for my daily ration of, well, my daughter's here, so I have to. My wife is looking at me like, yeah, and are you going to? Nope, apparently not. Normally, I don't watch my language. I'm attempting to. I'm not good at it. Okay, so that's that. And the fun part is, I'm not even really going to wait for that to dry. It is. I really don't much worry about any of this stuff. So I've already laid out a bunch of paints on my wet palette, but I use Winsor Newton Galleria acrylics. They're soft body acrylics. They're really simple to use. And I put them out on a wet palette and go from there. So what I've got some Mars Black, some, oh, that's Cobalt Blue. I don't want that one. Some Phthalo Green, some Raw Umber.
We tried, JJ.
A little bit of Yellow Ochre, and some Titanium White, wherever the hell that is. There it is, and Titanium White. So those are, oops, sorry, jeez. Also some Cadmium Red. I also have some Cadmium Red out. So, let me get a...
I love that we found a way that we can troll the Bug King. Karaoke. You just kind of gave us your
yes.
Achilles heel,
Yeah,
so
the
to speak.
counter troll measure.
Right. Well, and that's absolutely the truth. You can totally troll me with karaoke. The problem is trying to get me to go to karaoke so I can I actually like suffer through it. Asmodeus
Right,
Sulfur, sorry. I am encouraging Sov to be himself instead of lurking, even though I think you're awesome and want to take your class in person. Don't change. That's brilliant. So this is just some Mars Black here, and I'm literally mixing that in with the green primer. If I don't know what all colors Badger has for their primers, but this will work for any of the colors. So except maybe pink. Pink would probably not work so great, but you can actually do this with red as well. I mean, it's really, except of course that the flock has really absorbed an awful lot. Doopy 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 doo. Badger has a dozen primer colors. Yeah, they do. So really the only one I wouldn't suggest using is like a pink or something along those lines. But even red works just fine. In fact, the next step, I'll probably go ahead and add a bunch of red to this. And again, this is the intent behind this is to make sure that you keep things as genuinely random as possible. So, to that end, I'm going to go ahead, and again, I'm using this junk brush. I will move on to a decent brush at a certain point, but, you know, I just loaded this up, and I'm going to go ahead and pay attention to some of the locations of strata here now, and I'm just going to tint some of this with the red. I actually need to get some more red out. So part of
now,
the...
do you wet blend? Do you make sure it's still wet when you're adding the new colors? Sorry to just...
No, absolutely. Please do. Please do. So, yes, in this case, but you don't have to. You can let it dry all the way and put it on thick or thin. What you don't want really is much of the original base color showing through to start. All right, so this is a fresh layer of the cadmium red hue. And I'm going to just brush that out some. And the interesting thing here is that, you know, it's... In this case, I'm really just, well, dropping the piece. I mean, that's the thing you could do too, right?
That's very important.
Yeah, go ahead and drop it a couple of times. That helps.
Just so it knows who's boss.
Right. I'm actually removing a fair amount of the paint here and the primer so that this dries a little quicker. You know, it's starting to set up on me, but it's I'm frustrated with how long it's taking. So, and much like Seth Amsden, I'm really, really, really impatient when it comes to this kind of stuff. So let's see. Oh man, I missed a whole bunch of follows. So WCC War, thank you for the follow. Meowman97, thank you for the follow. And Nicholas7, thank you very much for the follow. Let's not go too far there. Crevices? Coincidence? Probably. I'm taking a little bit more of the cadmium red, and I'm going to intensify how much red I've got here. Now, I'm going to take some of the Winsor blue, which is a pretty deep cobalt blue, you can see. And I'm going to stain a whole different section of this, excuse me, with the blue. I haven't had breakfast yet. I wouldn't suggest doing that. Nicholas7 is now hosting me. Thank you. I have had coffee. I have had actually quite a bit of coffee. But I have not had I have not had any food yet, so my stomach is kind of going, hey, stupid, you put a bunch of coffee in us, but you didn't put any food in, so you get to feel crappy. Because there was a bunch of neat stuff going on stream Day, and Day's asking me why the hell I skipped breakfast, and she's saying that I've been bad. And I mean, she's not wrong. But all right.
And we don't want to hijack Bug King's class, but if
Why not?
you're in my chat exclamation point class. Why not? Why not both?
Why not both?
Exclamation point class. It'll give you a link to the Bug Kings channel. Make sure that you're following him. We're going to continue to be pretty quiet, but if folks are popping in, following, just make sure we pop exclamation point class every once in a while so people know what's going on.
Cool.
Speaking for herself, I make no promises to continue to be quiet.
That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. So I'm taking some of the raw umber now, dropped it out on the palette. When this is all done, I'll show you what my palette looks like too, which is it's, you know, really pretty limited. I do mix a lot of my colors on the fly. I don't have a whole bunch of miniature paint. I've got metallics, but that's about it. Metallics and a couple of flesh tones.
You only need about 12 of the acrylics, and you can mix really any color you need with that. Is that right?
Actually, it's a lot fewer than that. You can
Really?
do
Okay.
yeah, about 7 really. If you have
wow.
a good red, blue, and yellow. You want a pure white and a pure black, so that would be cadmium, or that would be a titanium white and Mars black. And then you want like a raw umber and a yellow ochre. And with that, pretty much you can get anywhere. Now, you're going to suffer.
You're better at this than me.
Well, so just like anything else, it takes practice, right? It's not something that you're. It's not something that'll come naturally right away. And understanding how to get to like really nice flesh tones and stuff like that. I mean, I'm still not good at that. So I have I have some Scale 75. I have their flesh tone set, and I do use that for my flesh tones. But for the most part, everything else is just mixed on the fly. Often, like you see here on the piece. So. Kicking ass. Good evening. Nice. I do. You know, there's Kikken.
How
ASS.
else do you pronounce it, right?
Right. Yeah. That's brilliant. I love it. All right. So now I'm taking some titanium white, and I'm going to start increasing the opacity of all of this. I'm going to be a little bit more careful now. But, I mean, a little bit. This is still really super sketchy. I'm just sort of sketching in where I want... I'm actually going to switch to a better brush now. So, a little bit of a shout... Actually, I'm not going to use that one. I was going to say a bit of a shout out to the WAMP forums. I was going to use one of their brushes, but it's a little big. So this is Winsor Newton Series 7 that I've had for a little better than 10 years. And I've brushed the point off the brush. There is no more point on this, so this is actually pretty good for a sort of rough utility brush. But I'm going to go through here and just start sketching in where I want a little bit more of a highlight. And there's another follow. I'll get to you in just a second. I do love Sam the Eagle, though. You're all weirdos. Oops. Did Discord just drop on me?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
We're still here. I'm still here anyways.
Yeah.
No,
I just had to wash my hands.
Got it. That's why it got so quiet, because Mocha's keyboard is
know.
like super clackety-clackety,
sorry.
and I'm like...
It's so loud.
It is.
Trying to keep
It's
it away from the
amazingly
microphone.
loud. It's so cool. It's like, you know, look at me.
It's great.
I'm all
It's so
cool.
wonderful.
I've got a mechanical keyboard. Yep, I'm badass.
You know, Cherry Brown switches are the best thing ever in a mechanical keyboard, just so you know.
Just so you know. All right. Well, you know.
Lower activation force, quieter sounds. Amazing.
You know, Mocha, you're just, as usual, just doing it all wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, this doesn't look anything like that. Oh, God. That's okay, but I'm paying attention.
Good. I'm glad I'm actually able to...
I'm just waiting for... I'm just waiting
Something
for chances to be a giant sarcastic jerk.
Well, I mean, you know, the ability to actually keep Mocha's focus is a talent in and of itself.
That is
So,
Yes.
true.
you know,
It's true. The only one that can command the attention of Sovereign and Mocha. The Bug King, ladies and gentlemen. It's fear.
it's fear,
people.
right? It's fear. Nice.
Oh.
So I'm going to continue around with a little bit more of the titanium white here, and apparently I'm going to also add some hair.
Hair?
Yeah, that was not intentional.
Like
Where to
human
go?
hair?
Like human hair, yes.
Oh, you're not serious. I was like, oh, wow, the greatest techniques of Bug King.
Yeah, adding human hair and then removing it with a pair of tweezers.
There you
That's-
go. It's very
that-
important to the process.
That next step is really, really important, yes. Continuing to brush this out. I may actually take a brief break and hit this with a hairdryer, which involves me getting up and walking into the bathroom, unfortunately.
Ew.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, we have a very tiny house. It's 1,100 square feet, and there are 4 of us living in it. And yeah, I actually set up.
That sounds like fun.
I set up streaming camp here on the dining room table and take over the entire house when I do this.
Awesome.
Which is actually why I only stream Sunday mornings, because that's about the only time that the entirety of the family is actually
That's
out of the
Bug
house.
King time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's yes. Yeah, not to put too fine a point on it. Also, you know, another fun little fact about the way my setup works is with those dirty fingers, no less. Yeah, she knows. Armin's Wrath was asking if my wife knew that I was using her hairdryer. And considering the fact that our kids use the hairdryer, I am definitely not the worst culprit here in terms of
Not the biggest offender.
not the biggest offender by any stretch of the imagination. So, all right, I am actually going to have to step away for just a couple of moments and hairdry this. I need it to be, for the next couple of steps, it's actually got to be completely dry. So, yeah, I'll be right back. I'm actually going to put up a BRB thing just in case somebody
Am I
else
allowed
drops
to
in.
talk while you're gone, or do?
No, you have to
be quiet?
continue to be completely quiet. There is,
The
yeah.
muted intermission. Sorry.
Right. So, yeah, so enjoy the dulcet tones of both Mocha and Sovereign, and
Dulcet tones.
dulcet, well,
right,
term
karaoke
is pretty
time.
loose.
Exactly
Yeah.
one person has ever described anything that comes out of my mouth as dulcet, and it was Bug King.
Brilliant.
No, it rhymes. Sovereign it rhymes with dulcet, but it's for the mature stream. Oh.
Oh, nice. All right, I'll be back in a moment.
My stream is
Starts
Marcus
with a
mature,
G.
madam.
It starts with bull and ends it no. I'm kidding. So Sovereign, how's this happening for you?
Well, I don't have any of the necessary sculpting materials sitting
okay.
around, so I'm just painting.
Oh, cool.
You guys are taking a class. I'm just like, I told
I
my
like
chat,
it.
I'm the hobo that was in the room when
You're the
sleeping,
flammable.
when everybody else came in, and I was just too embarrassed to leave.
I like it. And again, folks, welcome. Sovereign and I accidentally crashed the Bug King's class. We knew that he was going to be teaching something, but we didn't realize it was going to be in the same time slot that we signed up for. So we're doing our best to be on our best behavior. I'm trying to sculpt the base kind of in the first like 10 minutes of what he taught, and it's not great. But
Yeah, you need to try the close your eyes thing, because the distance between your waves is the same on basically
I
every one
know.
of them.
I'm having a really hard time trying to make it random. But again, this will take a lot of practice. But I'm really glad that I got to see the Bug King do that. So I know it's possible. Yeah, in the meantime, again, folks that are on my chat, I know I'm being a little bit more quiet. I know Sovereign is too. But we don't want to upset the class too much. But the Bug King has so kindly let us stay and ask questions. And yeah, so there we go. There we are.
Kindly let us. I wasn't going to leave anyways. I'm just going to sit here.
You're just
Pay
gonna
him back for everything he's done in every stream I've ever been in.
The Bug King comes back and we're like, night, favorite night. Yeah.
So it's great because
We had Smash Mouth going in chat.
Somebody
Oh my God.
asking us spare some change. Yes,
The good
I
news
need
is
to
that
get myself away from this.
the good news is that
Come on,
Discord is
Bucking,
being
take
a
it
total butt and totally digitizing you guys. So I find that actually perfectly fine and
no.
acceptable.
Ew.
Oh yeah, it's great. All right, so now I'm
Sorry
bringing
about
in some. No, it's my system, not your fault.
That log had a child.
Yeah.
Thanks, JJ.
Nice. So this is yellow ochre with a little bit of raw umber and a touch of black added in. And it's just a mix that I kind of like for this step. You could actually just go with yellow ochre. That'd be fine. And, it's not super critical, again, what exact colors you use. Yeah, real technical stuff here, sorry. Um, so this is just now a little bit of raw umber added in, and I'm just focusing now on mostly the flat top surfaces. And that's one of the reasons why I actually needed this to be more or closer to completely dry, is I didn't want to start pulling all of the darker tones that I've already put in into the rest of this. So hard to do because it's hard to spread one ration of 3 ways. Yes, Armin's Wrath, it is indeed harder for you to properly distribute your rations. I don't think I care. Yeah. Yeah.
You just need to team up with JJ Beard and JT Stark. They're like kind of patrolling too. So between the 3 of you,
I was gonna say you
should
can't
be able
out
to
troll
handle
the king of trolls. You're welcome to try.
Yeah. So again, this is still sort of kind of undercoating stuff. Most of this is the raw umber. I am adding in just a little bit of yellow ochre to this as I go. And you'll note that there's a distinct difference. Let me actually bring up the intense or the gain here so that you can see the colors a little better. I've got to do a little bit of color correction because this is not showing up correctly.
Oh, good. I have hair in mine. I now get to take. This is a very important step.
Take the
There's
tweezers.
And
Yep.
drum roll, please. Drum roll. Ta-dum!
Nice.
Perfect. It's perfect.
Brilliant. Oop, that's way too far out. Screwing with the white balance here. Yeah, I mean, this is so much easier to deal with in person. Because, of course, you're seeing the exact same thing that I am when it's in person.
Now, Bug King, where are you teaching next? When's your next class?
I don't know. I've spoken to Seth Amsden, the Hobby Sensei, Hobby Sensei.
Yeah, Hobby Sensei.
Yeah.
And we're in talks about possibly me going out to LVO.
Oh, awesome.
I
Ooh, I'll see
may
you here.
do ReaperCon. I'm not
Yay!
100% sure. I mean, it really depends on an awful lot of stuff, because
Sure.
the financial situation and considering the company that I work for, which is Walt Disney World, things are going to change probably pretty drastically because of the financial impacts of all of these shutdowns and everything else. So I don't know where
Right.
I'm going to be financially, and
Okay.
this is not by any stretch of the imagination my primary source of income. So in fact, my typical goal with any of this is to try to get it to be hobby neutral, which is one of the reasons why I'm so free with the information. And I think Seth Amsden is very similar. Although he is much more involved directly with sort of the hobby, but his is maintaining and keeping Game Castle up and running, right? So the financial drive that and I mean, trust me, I'm not knocking it. It's just that I happen to be in a situation. What was this? Gifting 5. Holy crow, JT Stark, thank you. And I got the
Hey,
JT
shout
Stark
out.
04.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Yeah, five gift subs to the. It's brilliant. Thank you so much.
What up,
Um,
JT?
So, and I got the T in your name because I caught you earlier today calling somebody out for look, you're the only person that actually saw the T in my name. Um,
Oh, hey, he's sharing the love. Holy crap! JT Stark just gifted 5
Jeez.
subs in on my channel.
Man,
Thank
he
you so
went
much.
he went all over the place. Thanks,
Oh,
JT.
oh man,
that's really
JT,
nice.
that's awesome.
Man.
Thank you so much, man. That is super
Dude.
generous. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, much appreciated. Exclamation point hype in all the chats.
Yes, please. I don't even think I have an explanation height.
I-
Oh, apparently I do have an
I-
explanation height.
You guys can do extra hype for Bug King in mine and Mocha's if you want.
Oh, no, Bug King, we have a question for you in my chat. GDAX1412 says, would you be willing to ask Bug King for me if he does online classes for non-streamers?
I don't, but that doesn't mean that I can't. So if there's enough interest to do something along those lines, we could do something where we set up like a Skype session or something along those lines, and I would be more than willing to help out. Typically, what I prefer to do, I would prefer to teach people what to do as opposed to do it for them. One of the things you'll notice that there's a Warcast Studios logo just underneath my face cam there. That's actually the company that I work with. I work with another fellow who goes by the online handle of Dr. Rhubarb. And Warcast Studios is actually what does all of the commission terrain for the gaming companies that wind up commissioning us to build terrain. So the latest one was for Parabellum. We did that tower, if you've seen it. But we've done a bunch of stuff for Firelock Games, Privateer Press, Weird Games, a whole bunch of stuff. And basically the attitude is this. We would prefer to teach you how to do whatever it is that we're doing, than do it for you, right? If you're willing to go ahead and put the time in to do it, let us show you how to do it. If you don't have the time or you don't want to, or for whatever reason you can't, then we can have a conversation about the possibility of doing a commission or something along those lines. Of course, the commission work that we do is in the thousands of dollars ranges, because there are lots of hours and it's a lot of, I mean, the materials and shipping alone can cost well over $1,000 for one of these projects. So, our clientele is a little different than the typical commission streamer or something along those lines. So, but anyway, so, it's not, we're not putting this stuff behind a paywall or anything else. And it's not, and not to knock that. I think that that's really wonderful that it's helped a lot of professional streamers, or sorry, professional miniature painters really turn this into like a lifestyle and a full-on business. So it's just that we're both in a position where this is not our primary source of income, again, and we can afford to share the information, so we do. So all of that being said, yes, if you wanted to do like a Skype session or something like that, honestly, if it works out that it doesn't really impact my schedule, which, again, I work for Walt Disney Imagineering, so my schedule is actually pretty hellacious.
Yeah, you never sleep.
I'm like frequently on my schedule shifts all over the place. So I work third shift, I work first shift, I work second shift. Sometimes I work first, second, and third shift all together.
All the shifts.
All the shifts. Mostly. So JT Stark here. I just caught a because mod. I missed something from General, sorry. More people miss the T than not. Mostly I just live with it. But had to give props to Useless Wizard as he nailed it the other day. Yeah, it's funny because I've seen you in multiple chats, JT Stark, and I've always was like, okay, JT Stark, and I don't know. I mean, I guess it's because I'm something of a grammar Nazi, I suppose. You know, I
Now,
mean,
which T do they miss? Is it the JT or is it the Stark?
well,
JT Stark?
there's
J?
no,
Did they call you J Stark?
no, J Stark, yeah, is what
Oh,
people
gotcha.
typically. So, what you paint, slate, yes. Zaya, it's actually a sculpted base, and it will be more a shale than a slate. Slate has got a lot more blue in it than shale does, although I will be now adding in a little bit more of the Windsor blue. So now I'm going to start working on getting more of these lines sort of shaded in. And instead of going with black, I'm just going with basically what is an indigo blue. And I put it on, and I'm going to go ahead and actually brush it out a fair amount. Speaking of karaoke, I don't know if you can hear my wife and daughter in the background, but they are singing Frozen.
Oh, we can.
Oh, how cute! I thought it might have been the TV or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is
Yeah,
the
but thank you so
TV.
much.
It is, in
Yeah,
fact, the TV,
but they're just singing along.
they're singing along, so it's like, oh
Oh,
boy.
what are they watching? Frozen.
Frozen,
No.
Frozen, yeah, Frozen 1.
Are they really?
Uh-huh.
That's amazing.
Is it Frozen 2? Oh, it's Frozen 2. Sorry, my bad.
Okay.
Frozen
Oh.
2.
Yeah,
Okay.
Frozen one's old now. Jeez.
Well, you know.
Don't you
And-
work for Disney? What's going on?
Yes.
Was it in DreamWorks? No, it was Disney. You know what? That's actually pretty funny. I didn't think about that.
Yes.
So,
I
Bucking,
do.
approximately how many colors do you usually put on a base? Because when I first started, I thought, oh, it's like black and white, maybe some glazing. But you do a lot of different colors. There's a lot of variation to it.
Um, it's hard to say because I don't use, miniature paint, so I'm not applying unmixed paint. In
Right.
fact, frequently before I put anything on, I'm mixing on the palette. Like I'm either, like in this case, this is raw umber that I'm using, but I'm
Uh-huh.
adding black to sort of turn it into a burnt umber,
Oh.
and that'll vary. Um, and sort of as a rule of thumb, I say don't ever apply the same color to the base twice. Every time you
Oh.
go back to the palette, it should be a different color. Now,
Okay.
that could just be you've added a little bit of black, maybe a little bit of white, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre, any number of things. But every time you go back to your palette, it should be, when you come back to the piece, it should be a different color. And the reason for that is if you
It's not my keyboard this time. Sorry. The
um,
reason for it is what?
if you actually look really closely at a rock, just like
Uh-huh.
pick up a rock and really look at it, it's full of all sorts of different colors.
Right.
I mean, even like a slate, which is, pretty universally like sort of slate gray, because,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you look at it really closely, there's reds and there's greens and even some pink. It's just really, really, really muted. But there's a huge amount of variation in that. I'm going to let that dry for just a little bit. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take some uh, titanium white next, and I'm going to dry brush this. So I've got a decent amount of variation, some really strong blues. There's still some of the red showing through. Um, but the next step is going to be, just the somewhat maligned, I suppose. I'm just brushing some of this out so it dries a little bit quicker. Um, I'm going to dry brush it. And but you're a jerk naturally. Yeah, Sabat, that's fine. I mean, I'm all about being a jerk. I mean,
He
in
does it
case
so well. If
in
you're going to
case
do
you
something, do it right.
right, absolutely. I'm missing that. There it is. So this is my dry brush. It was a filbert at one point. Now it's a mess. I strongly suggest hanging on to your mess brushes.
Yeah.
And this is just
See, someone told me that once. and I ended up with like 42 messed up brushes.
Oh no.
You don't
So
need that many.
yeah, keep a messed up brush of each type. And if you use different paints frequently, like excuse me, not eating breakfast bad. If you use enamels and acrylics, keep a messed up brush for both of them. Right? So
gotcha.
in that case, you've got both enamels and acrylics. You should have a messed up filbert for both enamels and acrylics. That's about the only time that you need any more than whatever type of brush you're using. So, Squirrely Minis, thank you for the follow. Or for thinking we're all weirdos.
I mean, why not both?
Yes, very likely both. So, but yeah, so I'm just bringing up the white again, and the process next is just going to be to now shade it back down. And I'm going to now start moving more towards what you would consider traditional rock style colors. So mostly browns, some grays, but as you work more towards the finish, you'll wind up using more and more of the traditional colors. And what's going to wind up happening with that is all of that original work that we did where we added basically a saturated red and a saturated blue, that's going to tint all of the glazes. I mean, and this is, effectively a glaze. It's about a wash consistency that I'm brushing over the top of this with some raw umber. For now, I'll come back in. I'm going to go ahead and do some yellow ochre to warm some sections up.
Oh yeah, let us get that link for you, GDAX. ! class in my chat, and it'll give you the link to Bug Kings. But I want to make sure we have that multi-stream link in there too.
I have that in my clipboard.
Oh, perfect.
There it is.
Brilliant.
Awesome. Thank you, Sovereign.
Yeah, it's almost like I kind of know what I'm doing sometimes.
I mean, at least when it comes to streaming, sure. Anything else, forget it. But
Yeah, basically.
Basic
Hey,
human
let's be
functions.
real honest. I don't know what everybody else to tell me what to do.
So, yeah. So, like I said, I've got a little bit of a wash consistency of the raw umber on my palette, and I'm going to continue to use that. I'll also tie in with some of the Winsor blue, which is again like an indigo blue, and I'll tint the ochre with that. So it sort of makes like a greenish color. You'll see here, here on that, right? Although that's not really showing up terribly well, but it'll show up better on the model because there's a fair amount of white there. So that's what blue and umber make.
Yeah, they
is
look
sort
nice
of this,
together.
this desaturated greenish color.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good shade color. I mean, you can use your fingers like that to go ahead and pretend that you dry brush some more. Like I wind up looking like a mess when I paint.
I was gonna say your hands are probably covered.
Yeah,
goodness.
but
I was
you
gonna
should
say
see
your,
me
your
after
left
work.
thumb. Yeah.
but not not like the traditional, like I'm checking my brush the way people. No, it's like I've gotten paint from the figure on my hands.
Yeah.
Or and it's because I'm like actually actively wiping paint off of the figure, and it all.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this is coming from me just being super impatient. I just don't.
But you can't argue with the results.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love
No,
that.
so my
Impatience.
my other job besides commission stuff is I am the paint R&D department for an automotive paint company.
Oh God,
So
you get
I'm
covered.
making my own colors and stuff. I come home covered in paint, and it doesn't come out.
Oh no,
Like,
automotive paint does not come out.
no, I need like xylene and some other pretty powerful
Right.
solvents to get
So-
that stuff off of my skin. It's ridiculous.
That's amazing.
And I'm also one of those people that's in the lab going, I wonder if this color worked right. Dip my finger in it. All right, yep, that's cool.
that worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
So this is red and black added in. I just want to, and that's basically how you do rust. And so you'll find iron deposits in rock all the time, and that's why you wind up with these browns in a lot of the rock,
Interesting.
right? It's, you can literally use, and sometimes I do, I often use pigments in a lot of stuff that I do. And some of my most used pigment colors are old rust, so like, black, blackish brown, and even fresh rust, which is that super orange color. So yeah, that's, you can wind up with rust deposits in any type of rock because you wind up with iron oxide. Iron is I think it's the most common metal on the planet. So this is some orange, some more, a little bit of rust stuff. This will get toned back just a little bit, but it's good to, you can, and again, like, too much, so just wipe it off. And so where this is going to occur and show up more often is where you would think that water would wind up pooling. So like maybe under here where these plants are going to wind up, where I added the flock earlier and painted over a whole bunch. So we're going to see a little bit of rust and dirt and grime sort of collect in those areas. So, all right, Sabat says that I am correct in thinking that iron is the most common metal on the planet.
Yes, and you can
Fact
always
check.
trust anything you read on the internet.
Well, but for some of that stuff, it's actually relatively accurate.
No, I was mostly talking like, people in chat who have previously announced that they are jerks.
Right. Yes. So, well, that's, believe it or not, that's how you make cast iron. Is you
Pull it out of rocks, don't you?
you just cook dirt.
Yeah, you cook dirt. I like that.
Literally, you set up.
it's-
You
get it
get a
real
bunch
hot.
of dirt and you get it hot, and you get a little bit of iron out of it, and then you cook some more dirt, and you cook some more dirt, and you can't, like, you don't want to burn dirt, you want to cook dirt. So, all right, so I added a bit of a knife edge to this brush, and I'm just now beginning to pick out some of these edges. So I'm now moving even further into the detailed portions of the painting process. So I started out really super
We must
rough
go
and
deeper.
super loose. And as I progressively get further along in this process, I'm going to start being more and more careful with the application of paint. And at any point, you can sort of stop, right? Even this right here, maybe if you went over it with just like another pass of like a almost like what Genuine Vision calls a powder brush, where you get almost all of the paint off of the brush and do a couple, 3, 4 passes on this just to pick up the edges, you could be done with it, right? So even where we're at right now, this would look perfectly fine. But we can go deeper, and so we will. There is more that can be done. There's a process that
Oh yeah,
is
epoxy sculpt.
sort of called, so Aves epoxy sculpt. Good stuff. Cheap, much cheaper than Milliput. Although Milliput does have its uses. Aves epoxy sculpt does not have an equivalent to the superfine white that you can get from Milliput, which is nice for if you're doing some really, really fine detail work. So, from
Do
effectively
you use water
Go ahead.
if you need to kind of have it more malleable?
Yes.
Okay.
Same stuff.
Just
So it's
regular water.
It's basically the same. It responds to water the same way. It's not aquaphobic the way green stuff and brown stuff is.
Right. Okay.
Ah, that's good to
So,
know.
so you can. I mean, and that's actually one of the tricks that a lot of people used to use, and I mean still do to some degree. But when you had to really work on getting a really garbage cast of a metal figure, and it had like a bunch of holes and all sorts of other messes in it, because it winds up, sometimes in the process of casting rulidium or other white metals, they wind up getting a bunch of holes and the like in them. It's just sort of part of the process of casting. Um, it You'd make a slurry of milliput or epoxy sculpt and just wash it over the top of it, and it would fill in all the little gaps. And then you could do a quick little sand. And sometimes you'd have to do 2 or 3 passes,
Interesting.
but it would smooth everything out. So,
Huh.
Old folks represent, yeah, Rulidium. Hey, Orcrist. Yeah, I've been in this hobby for a long time. Actually, Sabat TC and I were talking a little earlier because he's doing some casts of, um, or sorry, some resin prints of old BattleTech figures, and BattleTech 3025 was what got me in the hobby in the first place. So
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
before 3035 or 3025 or whatever it was, I don't know, when the clans thing came in. Smack Weasel. That's an awesome
That's
name.
a great name.
Yes.
That's a
Smack
name.
Weasel. Thank you very much for the follow.
Again,
Best Twitch
Mash.
handle.
mash, mush, smack.
Yep, all these things. That is brilliant. 3052. There it is. So 3025, back when it was just Innersphere stuff. That's when I actually started mucking about with this hobby. And then which anybody that follows me at all will find amusing. I actually played a fair amount of 40K and fantasy. And now I am one of the most ardent GW haters that you will find on Twitch. Um,
So hi, I was a Games Workshop store manager.
I mean,
How's it going?
how's it going? Yeah, Hello, representative of the evil empire. Hi, I work for Walt Disney World. The rat that ate Orlando. We all have our we all have our skeletons.
There you go.
You just don't like competing evil empires. It's fine. I get
Exactly. I am beholden to King Rat and not to King Citadel. So what I'm applying now is it's about a 50-50 even mix of Mars Black and Titanium White. And so this is my gray. And I'm just using this to desaturate now all of these super strong colors that I've got. And I'm going to push this more towards what you would more traditionally consider a stone look. As opposed to starting out with that whole, like, I prime it black, I dry brush it gray, I dry brush it white, I move on. You wind up with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm learning.
that's a lot
Way
of
to
people.
start.
Right. That's a lot of people go or start out there, and that's it's fine. It gets you a look that sort of works, but you'll look at it and you go like, yeah, that looks totally painted.
Yeah, it looks real flat.
Kohler Bear. Thank you very much for the follow.
it.
I thought at first it said cholera bear, and I was like, let me double check that.
Yeah, that's something very different.
Bear.
those are not similar.
So I hope you don't take offense to
Three
me.
bugs.
Yeah, I hope you don't take offense to me potentially misreading your name. But that's where that pause came from. I was like, oh, right, Kohler Bear. I'm actually going to go ahead and get out a little bit more titanium white. So what's interesting with these soft body acrylics is that the longer you leave them on a wet palette, if you leave them on a wet palette, the more dilute they get. And I do need
Oh,
a
so they
little
become
bit.
more workable.
Yeah. So instead of having to take and add water to them, they become more and more dilute. But at a certain point, you want to take advantage of, or you can take advantage of the fact that it is a thicker paint, which is what I'm doing here. So this is now straight titanium white. I'm actually going to move on to an even better brush. This is something that I won on Flickster's stream before he stopped streaming, which is a
nice.
Broken Toad. I am quite fond of this brush. I've been using it a lot.
Just as an aside,
Hmm?
it is 3:16 Pacific time. I believe we have someone joining us soon, so brace yourselves.
Yeah, we will go from 3 to 4, and the peanut gallery will get even more pronounced, which is brilliant. So, going to an even finer brush, which has a nicer point, I'm going to now start focusing on some of these much smaller details that I've cut in with the sculpting tool. And this is where you can really start getting some, it depends on what you're doing this for, right? So if you're doing this for like a competition piece or something, you want to take it this far. If you're doing this for an army, nah, this level of detail, you don't need to go there at all. But
Now, you're not following any of the crevices. You're basically kind of freehand painting titanium white as patterns.
both, actually. So I'm
okay,
following
both.
some of the crevices, but also, this section here is a little large for what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and take some, and I'm going to go ahead and start in with a little bit of white. And then I'll come back and blackline that. And maybe I'll add in a little crack there. So now we get to start sounding like Bob Ross, where we're adding happy little cracks all over the place.
Yay, happy little cracks.
I don't think I've ever heard Bob Ross add happy little cracks to things.
No? Oh, huh. Well, you should listen
Like
better.
trees and squirrels and other, rated G things.
How is crack not a rated G thing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about context, right?
Sovereign? God, get your head out of the gutter.
I work with a bunch of chubby white guys. Get a lot
Oh
of crack.
dear,
Get a lot of crack.
get a lot of crack.
It's like the plumber's crack. That's the kind of crack we don't want.
Although in this
Or
case,
crack.
it's more automotive workers crack.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So the question then becomes, what's worse?
Yes.
Yeah, don't want to think too much about that. That's frightening. Oh, again, you guys, welcome. We're taking Bug King's basing class, ! Class in our chat if you want to know more. And get a link to Bug King's channel. We've got the multi-stream link up as well. But let us know if you have any questions.
So yeah, I'm
Bug
gonna.
King might answer.
Well, I might answer if. So it's about TC. Talent from Catalyst like the idea of the larger battle companies painted by streamers leading up to next year's Adepticon, etc. I'll print the mechs. Just need to figure out who wants to get involved. So there you go. And Dr. Rhubarb is on. So he's the other half of Warcast Studios. He is the other fellow that worked on the Firelock Games terrain boards. Actually, it's the one that if you've been to Adepticon and you've been to the Firelock Games booth, they have that water board. That was actually done entirely by Dr. Rhubarb.
Nice. I remember that board.
So, and then we both worked on the Pirates Cove board that's in their rulebook.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and then the both of us together worked on the latest one for Parabellum, which you all would have been able to see at Adepticon if,
Yeah. Womp womp.
Yeah. So, stupid coronavirus.
Next year.
Next year, yes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of Mars Black now, and this is just straight Mars Black. I'm not mixing it with anything. This is literally just straight up black. And I'm going to start putting in these black lines now for where I want my happy little cracks to go.
I am putting updated multi-stream links in your guys' chats.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Thank you. And Wolf Priest, the epoxy sculpt definitely not edible. In fact, quite toxic. On the back it says directions for use. wear disposable gloves. Oh, okay. So yeah, would not recommend ingesting.
Yeah, you should not do what I did, which
All right.
is
Now I'm there.
there he is.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome.
So that is now our fourth or our third peanut gallery member, I suppose.
Yay! In
Um,
fact, if you guys are interested, I know that I've got my
So,
kind of bases, but I'll go ahead and raid Bug King, and I'm still going to watch and just kind of be an active participant, but not on Discord. I'll be lurking, but that way, we'll make room for somebody else hanging out. But if you guys are cool with that, I'll go ahead and set up that raid. Sound like a plan?
sounds
Go for
fine to
it,
me.
Logan.
Yeah, cool.
All right, sweet. A cup of coffee. Hey, Dr. Zoidberg, thank you for the follow.
All right,
Again, you
fine.
guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us while we take Bug King's basing class. Special thanks to Bug King and, of course, Sovereign hanging out with us. But you guys, exclamation point class if you want to know more. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and raid into there. And boop. All right, the raid is up. You guys, make sure it's the Bug King. I'm just
that
making
should be
sure
good
that
to go.
that's...
The only
yes.
thing is,
All right. Well, thank you
um,
guys so much. We will see you soon. Go ahead and end the stream. Raid Bug King, and I will be hanging
Alright.
out and watching
so
you
yeah,
paint.
there we go. So that should
Thanks,
have
guys.
everybody in there together.
Thanks, Mocha. So, and we're listening to I don't remember actually. Who's the fourth one?
So, I just wanna make- hello.
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 Sorry it took me so long to get into the voice chat there. I'm not very familiar with Discord. I'm still learning, guys. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Good.
You know,
All good.
I've got another, I don't know. Well, what we're going till 7, so another 40 minutes or so, where I'm going to continue working on painting this base up. But basically, what we've been doing is I decided to go ahead and just do what I was going to do for the basing class that I was going to hold at Adepticon.
Okay.
And at this point, I'm up to the point where I'm literally just like adding micro details to the base here. Although I am going to take a break here. I'm going to go ahead and get this foliage painted. So, and this is where the phthalo green really comes into play. I'm fond of phthalo green because it's a pure pigment green. It's not actually a mixed green. It is not a naturally occurring thing. It's like some sort of chemical that makes this green, but it is in fact a pure pigment, which is pretty cool. And so you can get some super, super vibrant greens out of this stuff. Now, I'm not using a... and that was EJCM 771. Thank you very much for the
I'm
follow.
working on finishing up the last bit of the waves there.
All right, guys. Signing out of voice chat. Sorry about that. Make some room for some more folks.
See you, Mocha.
Thank you
Thanks,
guys so much.
Mocha.
I'll be hanging out in Bug King's chat. But yeah, much love to you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Take it easy, everybody. So, and I'm also going to, at this point, take a little bit of the phthalo green here and add it underneath where I've got the foliage going. And that's going to sort of give us almost like a mold or a moss or something going on for these additional bits that I've added. So, and like I was saying earlier, I do not have a cadmium yellow. But I am using a yellow ochre, so that also gives you an interesting green, but the yellow ochre will give you a little bit more of a desaturated green because it does have...
Thank you, chicken ass.
That's not much of a... it's not a pure yellow. So, and I'm just going to touch the tops of this a little bit. There's still a little bit of wet paint there. This is going to go ahead and blend in. But one of the benefits of not applying flock after you paint, but before you paint, is if you follow the process where I went through and I added all those random colors and stuff, what winds up happening is that the flock itself winds up pulling a bunch of those colors up into it. So you wind up with a much more naturally looking plant matter, because you've got all these weird browns and reds and grays and stuff that happen underneath where you're working on the greens. So by doing that, it winds up doing the vast majority of the work for you for getting your flock to the point where you get something that looks pretty natural. So, Arx Tyrannosaurus Nova, or Tyrannus Nova. Man, Tyrannosaurus Nova would have been so much better. Sorry. Arx Tyrannus Nova, thanks for the follow.
Just make up people's usernames. It's fine.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go ahead and like append people's usernames to things that I think are cooler. So I'm also going to add a little bit of white to this now. So it's more of the yellow ochre, a little bit less of the phthalo green, and a touch of titanium white. And so that's just going to be my sort of final little highlight. Hugh Hefner subscribed with Twitch Prime. Thank you very much, man. That is super generous. Thank you for your Twitch Prime. I really appreciate that. So what are you using as a base for the foliage? This is a clump foliage. So it's just one of the... I mean, and it doesn't really matter what foliage you use. You can use fine flock, coarse flock. This is actually like an underbrush, so it's actually somewhat stuck together. It's the first thing that I pulled out of my flock drawer. So that's literally what decided me in using that. It was just the first thing I grabbed. And that's how much I actually care about the process for that, and how much it doesn't matter. It's literally whatever you got on hand works pretty well. So, but yeah, so that right there, let's get it on cam, is pretty good. Man, I'm gonna mess with the color temperature here some more. This is looking not at all like what it should.
So let's see what it is.
Okay, that's a little bit better.
That's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, I mean, but the thing, and so one of the nice things about this also, I will be putting this whole thing up on YouTube. I've got a couple of my VODs in the past up on YouTube.
Thank you for the follow, Teal Sky. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please, that's all right. I mean, we're all here. We're doing this sort of together, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so this will be available. I think it's the Bug King also on. Yeah, it's my Instagram that's the Bug King one, because apparently somebody else had the Bug King, and it looked like they were something of.
I'd be really disappointed if they're not an entomologist.
They are an entomologist.
Good.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
All right.
So
that's acceptable.
Yeah. So, or well, they're not. Yangtsen G Pen. Thank you very much for the follow. They've got pictures of, like, I mean, they may be actually a herpetologist or something like that, but they're not. And I mean, the origin of the handle was my first Games Workshop army was Tyranids. So nice. At that point, although it did have a little bit more of a sort of meaning because my uncle was curator of arachnids for the Smithsonian, so I constantly had tarantulas as pets and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So, I mean,
I would hate it, but that's cool.
Right. I mean, I did things like, I got a tarantula as a birthday present, so it spent my birthday on my head, and things like that when I was growing up. And I mean, my wife, it takes a little bit of adjustment to get through like dinners with my family, because my other uncle is a Bronx district attorney, so we get all sorts of fun horror stories out of the Bronx. And then just to put it into perspective, my dad is a blacksmith. So the family structure is world-renowned entomologist, district attorney that tries cases in front of the Supreme Court in the United States, blacksmith.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of these is not like the other. So anyway, yeah, dinner with the family can be interesting. We actually, one Thanksgiving, my uncle had come back from the Amazon, and he had gotten a fat-eating tick in his toe.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing, and honestly, I'm actually a little surprised that these things have not actually caught on, because they seem like something that like the crazy dietary people would like be all after, because all they consume is the fatty layer. So you wind up with a small spherical on your skin. The thing is actually completely subdermal, and all it consumes is the fatty layer. It doesn't consume muscle tissue or anything else, right? Just eats fat. It seems like
Yeah.
a brilliant, it's like, hey, look at this thing. It just eats your fat. It'll eat your fat away. You just need a bunch of these. But anyway, he showed slides during Thanksgiving dinner of him digging the thing out of his toe.
Oh yeah, that's no.
So,
I would love to have this. This uncle sounds awesome. Your uncle sounds amazing.
it was it's just like, and that's sort of normal. So when people that aren't used to that come in and like, yeah, we're gonna have dinner with the family, it's like, well, it's gonna be a little strange, but okay. So this is, again, now I'm adding a little bit more of the iron oxide, the cadmium red and Mars black mix, and to make sort of an iron oxide color, because that's really all that iron oxide is it's about a bit of cadmium red and a little bit of black, and that gets you
Thank for the follow, Captain Madden.
that nice sort of reddish hue. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more, and I want to go along on these sides here actually and darken this up some more. So now what I'm going to do is take the Mars black and the indigo blue, and I'm going to mix the two of them together to get it's like an off black instead of an off white. So really, really, really dark blue. So, and I'm going to get most of this outside edge done with that. And you can actually use this as a liner as well. So Fleischblumet. Wow, this is difficult. Fleischblumet motor.
I believe in you.
Yeah, I'm sure I butchered that. That was pretty spectacular name there. Thank you very much for the follow. But so this is probably reading. Yeah, I mean, it's basically
angry enough. You need to say
Yeah.
it way mad.
way more angry. So
By the way,
hi,
hi Splendiferous. Nice to meet you.
Hi,
meat
very, very
flour
nice to meet
with
you as
motor.
well.
Oh yeah, hi Splendiferous. Yeah,
Very
that whole bit. Sorry, I'm like all in like I'm teaching stuff mode and things.
Yeah, we kind of crashed Bug King's class, and
It's
it's been a thing.
been a thing. It's good. It's good. But yeah, so you can use this also as like as a liner. And what you'll find is if you don't do, I mean, and this goes for almost anything that you want to do black lining on. If you go with a really, really, really deep indigo blue mixed with a little bit of black to push it to, desaturate it towards, to knock the value even further down, your dark lining is going to look a lot more rich than straight black. Straight black is really pretty boring to the human eye.
It also doesn't really occur very often in the
No.
world.
Nope, it doesn't.
If you get it, if you don't want to make your own, this right here, I use this all the time for my black lining. This looks black until you actually apply it. So when you put it on your palette, hold on, it's got a clog. Of course it does. I'm trying to show something quick. Let's see this. Get it out there. All right, so when you put it on, it looks quite black. I use this one a lot. But when you spread it out, then you can start to actually see where the blue starts to come in, and it's just very, 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 very light. You can see that tone in there. Sort of. I mean, if I did the same thing here on my wet palette here, like what you were talking about, like that nice dark indigo blue, and adding that little bit of black to your black lining, you can see here. That's a little bit better.
So the problem is that my computer is something of a potato, so I don't actually have the multi-stream up, so I can't see anything that you just showed.
Okay,
So if
good.
you could actually explain it verbally,
for
that would be
everybody
best.
It's just it basically it's exactly what you were talking about making a dark indigo blue and a black.
Right.
Except instead of if you happen to come across it, it's the Reaper Nightmare Black, which is exactly the same thing about what you're saying, except it's just already
mixed up.
They already have one in the paint pot for you.
Right.
I love for exactly what you were talking about. I love all of those the Reaper ones because they have those colors that are almost pure black, like they have it for the Nightshade purple. And I use those as my for my black lining whenever I am working with something like that, or if I want to keep something cooler warm.
Right.
Putting that in there and using that.
So Doug Sunset says Payne's Gray for the win, and absolutely, Payne's Gray is another really phenomenal color. Which is it's a that's actually like a
Dale Rowney.
Dale Rowney. Well, all of them have like a Payne's Gray. I mean, that's a pretty common artist color. But yeah, so that's another really like dark. Although I typically just I have Mars Black and Titanium White, and that's how I make most of my grays. And if I need a warm, I'll add. Typically, if I want a warm gray, I add a brown to it. I don't add a red. And then if I want a cooler gray, I will add the indigo blue to it. So, but I mean, and that's my typical palette has. I mean, like right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors total, and that's all that this is just those 6 colors.
Nice.
So it's but I've gotten into the habit of just mixing and doing color matching and stuff as a skill. And just like any other sort of painting skill, it's one of those things that you get better at with practice. The benefit to it is that I don't ever have to really worry about keeping formulas, because I can just look at a color and go, oh, it's got a little bit of this, it's got a little bit of that, mix it up, and I'll try it out on a piece of paper or something first before I apply it to a figure. But if it's something where I'm matching, I can then tweak it just a little bit and get to where I need to be and work from there. So I often get questions on my streams. It's like, well, why did you just work on that small section of that model and not and then you bounced over to something else? And it's like, well, because I don't have to worry about maintaining and using a mix of paint all the way through. So that's the benefit to it. Now, of course, the drawback is you got to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And with all of the paints that we as miniature painters have access to, there's no real reason or necessity to do it. But I used to work in a metal shop. I was regaling you with the story of my father being a blacksmith. I worked for him. I started working for him when I was 9, and I continued to work for him until I was, I think, 24. And I did a lot of the custom faux finishes. And, one of the most fun things of doing faux finishes is like spending a day or two on this really beautiful paint job and then taking this table that you painted to look like, I don't know, sounds like the puppy's coming in.
Yeah, I'm trying to mute my mic while yeah, just hang tight for me 1 second, guys.
Yeah, no problem. There we go.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. I mean, earlier my wife and daughter were singing to Frozen 2, so it's just sort of the nature of the condition that we're in, right?
I did Smash Mouth. It was fun.
Yeah, so totally derailed my train of thought though. I forgot what I was saying.
You were talking
My
about
job here is done.
Yeah, brilliant.
Only using 6 colors, being able to jump around,
right?
And you were saying that it's not really a necessity, but then you segued into a story about being a blacksmith.
Right. So, and how I would do faux finishes on some of the beds, tables, chairs, chandeliers, and stuff that we'd make. You know, I'd spend a full week doing this really beautiful paint job on something to make it look like, I don't know, mahogany or something, and then I'd take it out in the driveway and I'd literally kick it around for about 45 minutes to scuff it up and break the paint job up and, you know, do some quote-unquote natural weathering.
Right.
But
It's pretty natural to kick it around and use a machine for that.
I mean, yeah, well, you know, I mean, it was a full-on, they'd be like full-on tables or lamps or something like that needed that, you know, and so, you know, it's, but in that time I learned an awful lot about how to do color mixing and stuff like that, and dealing with metallic paints, and so that there was already a base sort of knowledge. And I know for a fact that a lot of the folks that get like fine arts degrees and stuff like that also come away with an understanding of how all of that works. But again, because the miniature industry being the way it is, the miniature painting industry being the way it is, we've got all of these paints that are pre-mixed. So, you know, there's no real need to do that if you don't want to.
Do you are you using like heavy-bodied like Liquitex or Galleria?
Soft body Galleria, Winsor Newton Galleria is exactly what I'm using. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did. Have you tried? I'm just curious as if you tried. I have them, but I use them a little bit here and there. Have you tried the Chimera paint line?
I have not gotten my hand on them yet. I mean, it's something that I would be interested in trying, although the Winsor Newton Gallerias are serving me really well.
Yeah.
And they're so cheap comparatively, you know. I mean, a full tube this size, so a 60 milliliter tube goes for like just under $5 US. And I mean, it's titanium white. That's one of the most commonly used colors.
Yeah.
And it's going to last so much longer than a standard tube of paint.
Yeah.
Or a miniature paint thing. So I think the Chimera colors are a little bit more expensive, but
yeah, it's $80 for the set.
Wow. How many paints are in the set though?
It is, hold on a second here. It's 4, 8. I think it's 10.
Yeah, I would say there weren't a ton.
Yeah, it's just your basics. I mean, like there, you know, like for like blue, there's like a red shade blue and like a green shade blue.
Okay.
So it's like there's like a couple of paints that they actually have like, you know, a couple of different shades of.
Right.
Aren't the Chimeras all monopigment paints? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's just pure pigment. Yeah,
right.
They're pure pigment paints. So it's stark. But I mean, it's, you know, they have a really beautiful finish. I don't recommend them through an airbrush though. I did try that. They are way too thick. So trying to get those thin down. You
got it. Yeah, and so one of the things that you need to do if you're going to sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I just hit my webcam. If you're going to use a soft body acrylic through an airbrush, you can, but you want to mix Ford Fitch. I think you are the Ford Fitch, yeah? I actually grew up with Ford Fitch. Fitch, so, you know, it's kind of fun that I got a follow from him.
Nice.
Thank you for the follow, Trader Allegiance. Sorry,
yeah.
Need to interrupt you.
No, that's all right. I got to allowed my train of thought to get completely derailed by the fact that Ford Fitch followed me.
Hello. Top off my coffee.
So to run them through an airbrush, what you actually want to mix them not in the airbrush. You want to get like a blister pack or something like that, and progressively add water. You don't want to add like a whole bunch of water right off the bat. You want to.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, or use. I'm sure this is probably where you're going to go. Use like airbrush thinner or glazing medium or some other medium too, depending upon your location and what you can get away with. You know, you can get away with in some areas, like here in Central Florida, it's super humid, so all I need to do is thin with water, because I don't have to
Oh,
worry
Central
about.
Florida. You're from my neck of the woods.
Oh yeah,
My original neck of the woods.
original
Yeah, I'm
neck of
from
the woods.
Tampa.
Oh okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work for Walt Disney Imagineering in real
Oh,
life.
wow.
So,
I'm jealous. That was my dream.
Oh really?
I wanted to be an animator.
Oh.
But
Yeah. Well,
they got rid of their traditional.
Yeah, there's very little traditional animation. Actually, a project that I just worked on, which is the new films for the France Pavilion, the Canada Pavilion, and the Land Pavilion at Epcot. The new Beauty and the Beast sing-along. They brought the traditional animators back to do a change-up in the animation. So there's a whole new sort of funky song sequence that's all done with, and they brought the original voice actor for LeFou back to do, because it's all like how LeFou is
Babe, can I ask you for a huge favor? Will you grab me a wet rag?
they brought him back to sort of make him the unsung hero of the story, which I don't know. I mean, it's really popular with the Disney fans. I'm not a Disney fan.
I was a huge Disney fan. Growing up in Tampa, I mean, I went to Disney regularly. I went to Disney as an adult numerous times. Still would probably go back numerous times, but I don't have kids. I love Disney, but that's just me.
I have never been to Disney.
It is a lot of fun. I've like I said, growing up near there, I had we had all kinds of discounts in the summertime, so we could go and go to Disney a little bit cheaper. Granted, it was summertime in the middle of Orlando. I don't know if you've ever been in Orlando in the summertime.
I have. My family all lives in Florida, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
you
I
know,
live in Las Vegas, so
it's a little cooler
yeah.
in hell, but only a little cooler in hell.
Not by much.
Not by much, but yeah.
That's fantastic. No, what I was going to say earlier was, you say from Florida. I'm up in Indiana, so I mean, I don't have too bad of I get a lot of dry. So I do have these jars with a little mixing ball that I use whenever I do. And as far as like my thinner goes for my airbrush, I always use I make my own distilled water because I have really hard water. And 10% rub and and 90% rubbing alcohol, and I usually do about a 10 to 15% to about 85 to 90% ratio of alcohol to water.
Right.
And that works out really, really well for me. But I totally get what you're saying. As far as usually I don't have any issues though. The ones that I have had issues with. Do you airbrush then with your Galleria?
Nope.
Is that
No.
Okay.
I actually never have. I also have a bunch of the Badger high flow paints.
Okay.
And so those go right through an airbrush, although I do add a little bit of matte medium to them because they're glossy.
Okay.
So I mix those up with the matte medium, and those go straight through the airbrush without any work. And an interesting thing, Hugh Hefner was saying that he was watching a masterclass with Sergio Calvo, and he was taking tube paint using a brush to dilute it with in the airbrush thinner, with airbrush thinner in a cup, and just doing it in the cup.
Yep.
So you can, but
he does that, but I can't. I've tried doing it, and it's too much of a nightmare for me. Ends up getting clogged up. I'm not
Right.
Sergio Calvo.
So you can do that when one, you know your material, and two, you know brush extremely, extremely well, like Sergio Calvo does.
right.
Sergio Calvo is not you.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
So and so I think that the takeaway from that is that if you oh, Evelina. Hey, thanks for the Twitch Prime Slab. Much appreciated. It's good to see. So, General, if you could shout out Evelina, she made it. You almost never make it to my my streams. She's another Twitch streamer in Aussie land. Mr. Radar 88 followed me, so he's one of the locals here. He is, if you're ever interested in a hypercritical critique of your paint job, he is the guy to go to.
Plug this again. You guys keep going. I'm just plugging that that link again in for the 4-way so people
Got it. Um, so it's cool to see what you're up to. So yeah, Fort Fitch, this is literally what I was going to teach in the class. I mean, and it was a 2-hour class. Some of what's going on right now was going to be absorbed by some hands-on, because the idea was to have everybody that was in the basing class do this themselves. So I needed time to actually walk around with everybody. So I mean, this is basically done. I'm just now futzing with it. There's no real reason to do a whole hell of a lot more. I'm just playing around with it. That's one of the reasons why I've sort of kind of stopped talking about what my process is. Oh, the one thing I did want to show you is what my wet palette actually looks like. So bear with me here. I'm going to zoom this out. But, you know, that's it. And so you can sort of see where, I mean, this is the indigo and black. So that's the indigo blue. There's the black with the indigo blue. Added a little bit of white to one of the things. This was where I had a little bit of the Mars black added in. Did a little bit more. This is where I added some of the raw or the yellow ochre in. This is the raw umber, yellow ochre, and a touch of Mars black. This was the older Mars black, which has got too much water in it. This is actually what the paint looks like after sitting on my wet palette for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 days. The interesting thing is that you'll notice here with the cadmium. Oh fuck! It's all out of. Jesus. Terribly out of focus. Brilliant. Nothing but production quality in these parts.
Don't pay too much attention to my camera.
Let's go ahead and zoom in a little.
That's what I'm here for. I bring the production.
So this is where I was dealing. This is literally just a combination of Mars Black and Titanium White. Subscribe to Tier 2. Good Lord, Fort Fitch, thank you so much. You know, and so that's where, and the nice thing about going with Titanium White and Mars Black is that both of those are, it's a true white and a true black. So as you mix it, you get true neutral grays. Oh yeah, that's much better. Okay.
Do you ever desaturate to make your neutral grays? I do that a lot with magenta and yellow green to make my grays in order to make like a neutral.
But the difference with that is that it's not actually it's not a true neutral gray. So your true neutral gray is literally just a mix of white, pure white, and pure black. What you'll wind up with if you do something along those lines is either a warm gray or a cool gray. And because you still wind up with, depending upon which side of what you have a little bit higher concentration on. You know, so like in this case, like if I wanted to do a gray, you can take the burnt umber or the raw umber, take a little bit of blue here, and just a touch of the yellow ochre. I messed up my concentrations here, but this is where things get interesting, right? You can just sort of kind of play around with this. These three colors, as you muck with them, are going to wind up progressing towards a gray.
Okay.
Right, so this right here, this is sort of a greenish gray. I can go over here with a little bit more yellow ochre and get sort of a brownish gray, or sorry, the raw umber, and get more of a brownish gray. And the more yellow ochre you add in, the more sort of yellowish gray you're going to get, right? So, and as you work around with that, those three, you're going to wind up with different portions of gray that are all basic. They're just, the primary is basically desaturated, right? The difference with this is that if you go with white and black, it is just a progression of gray. So I can go more black in here if I want a darker gray and keep pushing that more towards the black. And it will get, what you can wind up doing, using the two in conjunction, right? So you wind up with these colors here. You can do that and then take some of the gray and really start messing around with the color temperature of your gray. So by starting with a true neutral gray and then tinting it with a mixed gray, you can wind up with some really interesting and very vibrant gray colors. But it's basically like cheat mode to start with just the pure white and the pure black to get what your value of light that you want. one of the things that I frequently do, here I'll actually pull in what my Resin Beast entry was going to be here, assuming I can get it off the base. Yeah, okay. So let's see how this looks. So this is where I'm at with my Resin Beast project. All of the scales here, through here, were started out with just a value study. So this is just black and white. And I work up the entire value of this. And then I start tinting in with just the browns. So the yellow ochre and the raw umber and a little bit of raw sienna, which has a reddish hue to it. But those are all pure pigment. So I just thin them down and I just sort of glaze them on. And because I've done all of my value work in a true neutral gray to either a pure black or a pure white, it doesn't affect the pigmentation that I apply to it.
Okay.
So that's the benefit of going that route. Now, if you're not going to go like with a value study and you're just like looking to go in and do like, all right, I'm just going to go to the end of this, directly to the end, I just want to go ahead and start with like a warm gray or a cool gray. It makes a lot of sense to mix things in that fashion. And as you play with this more, you'll wind up finding certain areas where it makes more sense to use a value study and tint, and other places where it makes more sense to just go in and don't worry about the value study, mix up or use an already mixed gray and work towards your completion with that. So, but that is probably more of a personal preference. It's one of those things that you could follow somebody else, Sovereign's Miniature Studios. You don't choose the bug life chooses you.
Anyways, I'm going to take that opportunity as I have my normal stream in about an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off and get some dinner, and I will
sounds
catch
like
you
a
guys
plan.
later. It's
Yeah,
been a
actually.
blast. Bug King, thanks. Actually, I know I was trolling a little bit, but thanks for that. I actually learned quite a few things there.
Brilliant. I'm really glad. I mean, that's exactly what this was supposed to be. Was just a way to go ahead and I talked about this at the top of the stream a little bit about how and Dr. Rhubarb also, and actually Mr. Radar 88 a little bit to the same extent. We all sort of are in the business of sharing knowledge and helping out as best we can. So it's different for folks that are using this as their primary career. And it makes a huge amount of sense, I think, to support the people that have Patreons and stuff like that, because you learn a huge amount from them. But I happen to be in a position where this is not my primary source of income, so I get to share the information. But always troll the bug. It's a given. Yes, Evelina, please do. People need to try to troll me. It's wonderful.
It keeps you humble.
Nothing keeps me humble at this point.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to head out, guys. Y'all have
All right.
wonderful. Nice meeting you, Splendiferous.
Nice
Yeah.
meeting you too. You be safer.
Yeah.
It's been a blast. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So
my job is I have me in a lab by myself, so
Right.
I'm probably okay.
So let's see who all. I think I'm going to go ahead. So Thunderdome Drew should already be up and running. He's on from the 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. slot. So I'm going to see about possibly raiding into him. Oh, speak of the devil.
I'm live and ready and just going through intro song stuff. So
All right. Sounds
I didn't
good.
know that I was that low.
Nice meeting you, Sovereign Miniature Studio. Have a good one. Thank you so much. Thank you for the follow. Squeegee Man Zero, thank you very much for the follow.
So yeah, so we'll continue this amazing Adepticant sort of train wreck and hand you all over to the wonderful Thunderdome Drew and Ahriman's Wrath, and you guys will actually stay on here with Splendiferous Minis. He's on till 6 p.m. on the time slot. So thanks everybody, and I
got
hope
the new multi-stream
And I
link
will be
as well.
in a
brilliant. Okie dokie. Rock and roll, folks. Thanks for sticking around.
Thank you for the stream, man. Thank you for the info. I'll be tuning in again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Right.
Actually, if I'll go ahead and just drop this in Thunderdome's chat here. There is a multi-stream link that has all three of us in there.
I apparently spelled Thunderdome Drew's name wrong. Brilliant. Thunderdome Drew. The hell.
DRU.
God, so bad. Oh.
Hey, Sov.
DRU, yeah.
Welcome,
Thunder.
welcome, Raiders. Welcome, Raiders.
Thunderdome. Oh, it's Thunderdome, not Drome.
There you go.
Yeah.
Someone
Thank you very much.
disconnected the brain.
Yes, indeed. There we go. Okay.
Go eat all the food there, Sov.
All right. Once again, folks, thanks so much, and enjoy the Adepticant.
Thank you, Barking. Have a good one. Thank you, sir.
All right, guys. I'm just getting back from the gas station and picking up.
Hey, Danny.